So AMD has dropped its new top gaming CPU, the Ryzen 7 9850X3D. And the big question on everyone's mind is this really the new undisputed king? Well, today we're going to break down all the specs, the real-world performance, and maybe most importantly, what gamers are actually saying to figure out if that crown truly fits. All right, so let's kick things off with the big headline claim from AMD. The one that's got everybody talking. And there it is, right in black and white. Look, based on the raw numbers, AMD has technically taken back the throne for pure gaming performance. It's a title they're getting pretty used to holding, let's be honest. But this is where the story gets a whole lot more complicated, because the performance gains over the chip it's replacing are, on average, tiny. And that makes its actual value, and maybe even the reason it exists, a really, really hot topic for debate. So, to really understand what's going on with that small performance boost, we've got to look at the numbers. Let's dive into the core specs of the 9850X3D. At its heart, this thing is really a refinement of a winning formula. It uses a massive amount of 3D V-cache, which you can just think of it as super fast memory stacked right onto the chip that games absolutely devour, and it's aimed squarely at enthusiasts who want the highest frame rates, period. Okay, so taking a look at the spec sheet here, we see a pretty familiar layout, right? 8 cores, 16 threads, that enormous 96 megabytes of L3 cache, and a 120-watt power draw. Now keep these numbers in mind. The most interesting figure here, the one that tells pretty much the whole story, is that 5.6 gigahertz max boost clock. And here's the price of admission. At a launch price of $499, this chip is planted firmly in that premium enthusiast-grade category. It's right where you'd expect a top-tier gaming processor to be. So with that price tag in mind, how does this new chip really stack up against the one it's replacing, the 9800X3D? I mean, that was, and frankly still is, a massively popular CPU for gamers. And when you put them side by side, wow, the picture becomes crystal clear. The core count, the cache, the power draw, they're identical. The only real difference on paper is that 400 megahertz higher boost clock. That's it. That's the whole game right there. And in a lot of general benchmarks, like 3D Mark, you see exactly what that little clock speed bump gets you. A small, consistent, but ultimately pretty minor performance gain. Here, it's just a 2.4% uplift. Not exactly earth-shattering. But, and this is a big but, it's not always a single-digit story. In very specific, really compute-heavy tasks like YCruncher, which is this wild program that just calculates pi to trillions of digits, the gains are huge. We're talking a nearly 20% improvement. Now, that is seriously impressive, and it shows what the new architecture can actually do when you really push it. And this quote from Storage Review just absolutely nails the story of this CPU. It's not some revolutionary leap forward. It's AMD taking a design that was already fantastic and just polishing it, squeezing out a little bit more performance wherever they can. Okay, but we all know gaming isn't everything. What happens when you step outside of that gaming comfort zone? How does this chip handle productivity? Actual work. This is where the fact that the 9850X3D is a specialist really comes into focus. While that V-cache makes it an absolute monster for gaming, its 8-core design tells a completely different story when it comes to productivity tasks. In heavily multi-threaded work, things like video rendering, the 9850X3D falls way behind competitors that are at a similar price but just pack in more cores. I mean, against something like the Intel Core i7-14700K, it's about 25% slower. Oof. So this is the trade-off, plain and simple. You are choosing to get what is arguably the best gaming performance on the market, but in exchange, you're giving up that raw multi-core power that's so important for heavy content creation. So with all this data on the table, what does the target audience actually think? What's the word on the street in the PC building community? Well, for a certain type of buyer, the performance purist, the logic is pretty simple. If you're building a brand new PC from scratch and you want the absolute fastest gaming chip, no questions asked, the small price jump over the older model is an easy pill to swallow. But then you have the other side of the coin. A lot of builders are looking at this tiny performance gain and they're just asking, why? For them, this small of an improvement just doesn't justify a whole new product launch, especially when the older model is still fantastic and you can often find it for less money. This really breaks it all down, doesn't it? If you are building a brand new, no-compromise, top-of-the-line gaming rig today, yeah, the 9850X3D makes a lot of sense. But if you already own its predecessor, or if your day-to-day work involves heavy multi-core tasks, or if you're just trying to watch your budget, it becomes a much, much harder sell. So let's bring this all together. What is the final verdict on the Ryzen 7 9850X3D? Should you run out and upgrade, or is it better to just wait? Man, this quote from Tom's Hardware really captures the feeling around this launch perfectly. Yes, it's a winner. Yes, it is technically the fastest. But the victory is so narrow, it's so incremental, that it doesn't feel like a major step forward. It feels hollow. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. Is this the new normal we should all get used to in the CPU market? Are we heading into an era of smaller, more refined gains that still come with a premium price tag? Or is this just one small, awkward step right before the next giant leap? I guess only time will tell.